Hi, I'm Kaylin. My sister signed me up to sing, not out of love, but to humiliate me. She called it a harmless joke, told everyone I'd chicken out. But I didn't. I stood there, mic dead, crowd laughing, a video mocking me on every phone, and still, I sang. She thought she was setting me up to fail. She didn't realize she built me a stage. Before we begin, tell me, have you ever been someone's punchline and turned it into your power? Drop a comment. I'm listening. The minute I stepped through the double doors of Green Hollow Middle School, I could feel the chill. Not from the weather, but from the way the hallway always seemed to narrow when I entered it. I kept my eyes low, hugging the strap of my backpack a little tighter than usual. The linoleum tiles were scuffed and familiar. They never looked back at me the way the students did. Everyone else had found something to buzz about. The posters were up, bright and cringingly cheerful, plastered across every wall. End-of-year talent showcase. Sign up by Friday. Someone had even drawn a star around the word showcase, like we were on Broadway and not stuck in a gym with broken folding chairs. I didn't pay it much attention. Why would I? I hadn't signed up for anything. That's why it stopped me cold when a girl I barely knew passed by and muttered with a sideways smirk, "Can't wait to see your big moment, cave girl." I blinked. Cave girl? I followed the low murmur of voices toward the auditorium board where the sign-up sheet had been taped. Students leaned in, chuckling, nudging each other. When the group shifted, I stepped forward. There it was. Kaylin Godsey, solo vocal performance, closing act. I didn't even remember breathing for the next few seconds. My stomach felt like it had slipped 2 floors beneath me. A few students snorted behind me. And then, there she was, Callista, leaning casually against the wall, her arms crossed, flanked by 2 of her glittered-up friends. She looked me straight in the eye and smiled, warm, almost tender. "You're welcome," she said sweetly. "Everyone deserves their moment, right?" Her voice dripped with sugar, but I could hear the mockery underneath. She didn't need to roll her eyes or nudge anyone. Her smile did all the work. I stood frozen, fingers twitching at my sides. For a split second, I thought about grabbing a pen and scratching my name off the list, but I didn't move. Behind me, someone whispered, "Finally crawling out of her cave, huh?" Laughter, not loud, just enough to press into my back like a sharp thumbtack. I turned away before my face gave me away. That afternoon, I made it through the rest of the day without speaking more than a few words. I stayed inside myself, quiet, careful, watching. At home, the table was already set when I got in. Mom was plating overcooked green beans. Callista had arrived earlier, already showered and glowing from her post-practice high. She recounted some funny incident at school, something about a soda exploding on a teacher. Mom laughed like it was the best thing she'd heard all month. I sat at the end of the table. Not once did anyone ask how my day went. And I didn't tell them about the list. Not that anyone would have listened long enough to care. Callista's voice filled the kitchen like background music. Her perfect GPA, her team-winning regionals, her campaign for prom committee. Mom refilled her glass without even looking my way. Dad hadn't been around in a while. His absence was the one thing in this house that everyone politely ignored, like the crack running down the living room wall. After dinner, I loaded the dishwasher in silence while Callista retreated to her room. Mom went to grade papers. I climbed the stairs, heart pounding harder than it should have for a girl who hadn't said a single word at dinner. In my bedroom, the light was soft, the sheets slightly crumpled. My notebook sat on the desk where I left it, open to a blank page. I sat down, picked up my pen, and wrote, "She did it to embarrass me." I stared at the words for a long time. Not because I didn't believe them. I did. I just wasn't sure what came next. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I closed the notebook and laid back, hands clasped on my stomach, eyes fixed on the ceiling fan spinning quietly overhead. It felt like everything in this house was always spinning. Conversations, attention, affection, but none of it ever landed on me. And now I was going to be the last act on a stage I never wanted to be on. I didn't sign up to sing, but somehow, everyone already expected me to fall. That thought stuck with me the next morning as I walked into school 15 minutes earlier than usual. The hallways were mostly empty, just a few janitors finishing up, a couple of teachers chatting by the faculty lounge, and the hum of the vending machine echoing louder than usual. I wasn't hoping for much, just maybe they'd taken the list down, maybe someone realized it was a mistake, or a prank, maybe it never even happened. But as I stepped into homeroom, hope deflated faster than a kicked balloon. Stacked neatly on every desk was the official program for the end-of-year showcase. Glossy, bold, printed. The school logo on the front, the event title in curling script. Someone had even added glitter marker to a few covers. I slipped into my seat without a sound. Before I could grab a copy, a girl in the back, Taylor, always loud, always watching, flipped one open, glanced at a page, and then smirked. "You're brave, Kaylin. Doing comedy takes guts. You do know it's comedy, right?" I didn't answer. She tossed the booklet onto my desk with a casual flick of her fingers. The second I saw my name, or what was supposed to be my name, my chest went cold. Kaylee Goofy, solo vocal, Scarbo Fair. Goofy, not Godsey, not even close. And Scarbo Fair? They didn't just misspell the title, they mangled it like a bad pun. Next to the text, someone had drawn a tiny cartoon, a chicken holding a microphone with big googly eyes and little music notes above its head. Like I was a farm animal stumbling into the spotlight for laughs. I couldn't even hear what people were saying around me. The noise blurred, like someone had turned down the volume on everything but my heartbeat. Don't react. Don't show them they got to you. I folded the paper slowly, carefully, the way you'd fold something delicate. I slid it into the front pocket of my backpack. No rush, no flinch, just slow and clean. Mrs. Dunley, our homeroom teacher, walked in with her coffee, glanced briefly at me, then at the rest of the class. She saw the program in my hand. She saw the smirks. She didn't say a word. A boy across the room, Elijah, I think, called out, "That's kinda messed up." Mrs. Dunley didn't even look up. She just shrugged and said, "It's just a joke. Don't take everything so seriously." It was then that I realized it wasn't just Callista, or a few students. Even adults saw me as disposable, as a punchline. The rest of the day slid by in a haze. I didn't speak unless called on. I didn't eat lunch. I didn't check my phone. When the final bell rang, I waited until the hallway was nearly empty before stepping outside. The air smelled like wet concrete and spring pollen. I walked home the long way, cutting through the neighborhood behind the school just to avoid running into anyone. By the time I stepped into our living room, it was chaos. Callista was in the center, twirling in a sleek sequined dress. Her friends lounged on the couch, tossing compliments like confetti. "This one's it," one of them said, taking a picture with her phone. "Total showstopper." I tried to slip past unnoticed, but the second I reached the stairs, I heard one of them whisper, "Hey, is that the girl from the program?" Another voice chimed in, high-pitched, teasing. "Yeah, viral chicken girl." Laughter. Callista didn't stop them. She didn't defend me. She didn't even look surprised. Instead, she said, in that sing-song voice she used when she was trying to sound generous, "Maybe it's her time to shine, even if she burns." I didn't stop. I didn't turn. I just went up the stairs, one step at a time, each foot heavier than the last. In my room, the light was already fading. I didn't turn on the lamp. I sat on the edge of my bed and pulled the program from my backpack. The page was still smooth, no tears, no creases. On the back, near the bottom corner, I picked up a black pen and wrote 5 words in all caps. "You lit the match first." I folded it again, sharper this time. Not gentle, not soft. Like I was turning it into something else. Something dangerous, something undeniable. That paper wasn't a joke anymore. It was proof. I wasn't mad they laughed. I was mad they expected me not to. So the next morning, I woke up before the alarm even buzzed and packed my lyric notebook first. I didn't even glance at my reflection as I left the house. It wasn't about looking good. It wasn't about making an impression. I just needed to know. I needed to see with my own eyes if my name still meant something in that auditorium. The rehearsal schedule had been taped up to the door near the band room. I walked through the side entrance of the school before most kids even arrived, the linoleum floors still echoing with the sounds of early mopping. In my hand was the notebook, tattered at the edges, pages softened from years of being opened and closed. It was the only thing I ever inherited from my mom before she passed. I approached the board with cautious hope, though at this point, even hoping felt like a betrayal of common sense. And there it was, my name still listed at the bottom, but the title had changed. Finale Quartet, Pop Remix, with Callista, Shiloh, Brantley, Eva. I stared at it, heart sinking one slow inch at a time. No Scarborough Fair, no solo vocal, no me. A knot formed in my stomach. I walked into the auditorium slowly, my sneakers squeaking softly against the polished wood. A few students were already inside, chatting casually, as the stage manager flipped through sheets on a clipboard. I cleared my throat and walked over. "Excuse me," I said quietly, pointing at the board. "I think there's a mistake. I never agreed to change songs." She looked up, just barely, and offered a shrug. "Oh, they said you switched. Group numbers close stronger, right?" My voice caught in my throat. I managed to say, "I didn't switch." She blinked, then nodded toward the stage, where Callista was leaning against the piano, flipping her hair, laughing with Shiloh. "Maybe check with your sister. She brought the new track." And just like that, the conversation was over. I didn't move. Not for a few seconds. I just stood there, staring at the stage, at the people who had taken something that was mine, again, and turned it into something else. Something shinier, louder, flashier. Callista caught my eye across the room but didn't stop laughing. She didn't wave, she didn't blink, just tilted her head like I wasn't even standing there. I didn't confront her. I turned and left. The hallway felt colder now, the air sharper. I kept walking until I found the back bleachers by the practice field. From there, I could still hear the music starting up from inside, bass thumping, voices layering over each other. The same song, my song, only now it wasn't quiet. It wasn't haunting or delicate like I'd imagined it. It was dressed up in synthetic beats, echoing claps and glittery harmonies. My favorite line, my mom's favorite line, was now being belted with exaggerated flair by Brantley, who hadn't even been able to sing in key last month. The words hit differently now. Plastic, mocked, rewritten. I pressed my fingers to my temples, trying to breathe through the ache building behind my eyes. I didn't cry. I couldn't. If I started crying, I might never stop. Instead, I opened the notebook. My hand was trembling slightly as I flipped to the next blank page, and in the space beneath the last entry, I wrote, "If they won't let me sing, I'll just speak so loud it sounds like a song." It wasn't defiance. Not yet. But it wasn't surrender either. When I got home, the house smelled like reheated takeout. My father wasn't there. He rarely was lately, always working overtime or getting gas for 2 hours. My mom's old cassette tapes were still lined up neatly beside the stereo. I reached for the one with the smudged label, Lullabies, for Kay. I didn't eat dinner. Didn't say a word to Callista, who was in the living room FaceTiming someone about nail polish swatches and how the glitter shade just screams closing act energy. I shut my bedroom door. I taped the printed lyrics I'd written weeks ago, my original arrangement, to the inside of my closet door. Then I turned on the old stereo, rewound the cassette, and let my mother's voice hum through the static. She always sounded softer on tape. I sat beside the door, knees pulled up, notebook open in my lap. And for the first time in days, I whispered out loud to no one, "I'm still going to sing, no matter what they do." It wasn't loud, but it was mine. They took my solo, but they didn't take my voice. It wasn't even 7:30 yet when I walked into the music hallway the next morning. The building still held that stale smell of old carpet and pencil shavings. I walked past the trophy case, past the line of theater posters faded from sun, and stopped in front of the choir room door. I hadn't planned on saying anything, but after what they did, after hearing my words twisted into a glittery joke, I couldn't keep pretending I didn't care. Mrs. Carver was inside already, setting down her coffee and flipping open the morning's rehearsal chart. She didn't look up as I stepped in. I stood there for a few seconds before speaking. "Mrs. Carver? Can I ask something?" She looked over her glasses like I'd interrupted an opera. I cleared my throat, trying not to let it shake. "I never signed up for the end-of-year show. Someone else put my name down. And now the song I prepared, it was replaced without anyone asking me." She blinked slowly, then sighed as she reached for her pen. "Kaylin, it builds confidence. That's what these things are for. You should be thankful they included you at all." My fingers curled into my palms. I nodded stiffly, biting the inside of my cheek so hard I could taste copper. "Okay," I whispered. It wasn't okay, but I knew from the tone of her voice, it didn't matter if it was or not. I stepped back toward the door, then paused. "I'd like to rehearse a different piece," I said. "My own. Could I schedule time with a mic?" She let out a breath that was half a laugh. "You don't need a mic, sweetheart. This isn't Carnegie Hall." Behind me, a few students chuckled. One boy near the back mimed flapping wings, pretending to hold a microphone with a squawk. "Goofy's got pipes!" he laughed. I didn't turn around. I just walked out, the soles of my sneakers sticking slightly on the waxed floor. The laughter followed me down the hallway like gum on the bottom of my shoe. I didn't head to class, not right away. Instead, I sat at the upright piano that had been shoved into the main corridor years ago. One key permanently stuck, the finish chipped. I pressed my fingers to the ivory keys but didn't play. I just sat there, letting the hallway buzz around me. The janitor passed by pushing his cart, and for a moment, he paused. He didn't say anything, didn't mock me, just gave a nod like I belonged in that space. That was enough to hold me together. Later that night, I skipped dinner again. No one asked why. Callista was busy modeling her new outfit in front of the full-length mirror in the living room. Dad was on a conference call that lasted hours. The sound of him agreeing to things he never followed through on echoed through the house. I closed my bedroom door and flipped open my journal. The folded schedule, the flyer with my misspelled name and cartoon chicken, lay in a pile beside my desk lamp. I wrote only one line. "They took away the sound, so I'll give them the silence they'll never forget." Below that, I drew a box, an empty one. No words, just space, a space that belonged to me. Then I tore the page out carefully, taped it next to the lyrics I'd written, and stared at both until the tape curled slightly at the edges. I stood there a long while. Then I picked up a pen and quietly walked to the school flyer I'd pulled from my backpack earlier, the one taped beside the fridge, listing the alternate sign-up sheet. I wrote my name again at the very bottom. Kaylin Godsey, a cappella, no mic, no lights, no stage crew, and this time, no announcement. I didn't tell anyone. Not my dad, not Mrs. Carver, certainly not Callista. I didn't need applause. I didn't need her approval. I didn't even need a microphone. Because maybe, just maybe, if they didn't think I needed one, then I didn't need permission either. The rain began sometime after midnight. I hadn't noticed at first, just the subtle shift in air, the weight of the wind pushing against the windows. But as I sat on my bed, legs crossed, the soft patter of drops against the glass became impossible to ignore. It was the kind of rain that didn't demand attention, but made you pause anyway. Like someone humming behind a closed door. My desk lamp cast a small circle of amber light on the comforter, and I had my old notebook spread out in front of me. The pages were soft with wear, some corners dog-eared, others bent from being stuffed into backpacks too quickly. The ink had bled through in places. Lyrics filled nearly every inch. Scribbled phrases, melody lines, occasional doodles of treble clefs and stars. My own chaos, but tucked near the back, taped gently with yellowing masking tape, was my mother's handwriting. Scarborough Fair, lullaby version, for when Kaylin can't sleep. I ran my finger across the words. Her letters were neat, rounded, a little shaky near the bottom, as if she'd written it while standing in the kitchen, distracted. The memory came back in waves. I must have been 6, feverish, shivering under layers of blankets. Mom had wrapped me in her favorite blue hoodie, the one with a missing drawstring and faded cuffs. I remember her humming from the kitchen, stirring soup with one hand, holding a cassette recorder with the other. Her voice wasn't perfect. She hit wrong notes, but it was soft, safe. She'd knelt beside me that night, tucked the cassette into my pillowcase, and said, "This one's for when I'm not there, baby girl." I reached for the old tape now, still kept in a plastic case. It barely worked anymore, but I held it anyway, like proof that something once existed. Then, slowly, I started humming. The same lullaby, off-key, just like her. I let the words find me, line by line, not to rewrite the song, just to keep it going, to finish what she started. Are you going to Scarborough Fair? Parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. She once was a true love of mine. Below her lyrics, I wrote something of my own. But I walked the road she never could, with no one's hand but mine. I closed the notebook and exhaled. The rain was heavier now, like it was trying to wash something away. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving the world outside damp and gray. I moved quietly through the house, hoping to avoid Callista and whatever entourage she'd summoned for the day. But as I passed the kitchen, I felt her presence, not Callista, but my mother. She was sitting at the table, sipping coffee, looking up at the lyrics I'd taped beside my bed the day before. Her expression didn't change when she noticed me. Instead, she gently set her mug down, walked over, and began brushing my hair without a word. I sat still, the way I used to when I was little, and she'd do the same before school. After a while, she said, "You don't need a crowd to be heard, just someone listening with their heart." It wasn't an apology, not exactly, but it wasn't indifference either. And that was enough to keep me from unraveling. She didn't say anything else. She just squeezed my shoulder and walked back down the hallway, leaving her coffee half full on the table. I stood there for a moment longer, then packed my bag for rehearsal. I didn't grab the school folder or printed program, just the notebook. And my mom's old hoodie, the same one from that night years ago. It still smelled faintly of cinnamon and lavender detergent. I pulled it on under my jacket. It felt like armor, soft but unbreakable. I didn't know what the rehearsal would bring. I didn't care. I wasn't walking in to fight anymore. I was walking in to remember that I never needed their approval to belong here, to remember that my song didn't start with them and wouldn't end with them either. I wasn't here to prove anything. I was here to sing. I didn't need their permission to sing a song that was already mine. The next morning, the air still smelled like wet leaves and old bark from last night's rain. I zipped my hoodie halfway, Mom's faded blue one, and tucked my notebook tight against my chest like it could anchor me to something real. School was quieter than usual, or maybe it was just me, inside my own head, where things had gone oddly still. I got there early for dress rehearsal, early enough to hear the stage crew still taping down cords and adjusting lights. I wasn't on any main list anymore, but someone, maybe the student director, maybe someone trying to be fair, had penciled me in last, almost like an afterthought. I didn't mind. The end would be quiet. Maybe they'd already gone home by then. As I waited backstage, the assistant stage manager handed me a tiny wireless mic. She looked uncomfortable, her eyes darting around. "It might be acting up a little," she mumbled. I nodded, took it gently. "Thanks." She didn't meet my eyes. I didn't say anything else, didn't ask questions. I wasn't here to beg for functionality. They called my name, or, more precisely, Kaylin G. Lights dimmed. A hush, well, more a shuffle, passed through the auditorium. I stepped forward, notebook in one hand, mic in the other, one breath in, then, screech! The mic let out a violent burst of feedback and died. Just nothing. A beat of static silence. I looked toward the tech booth. The AV guy half raised his hands and shrugged. He didn't even stand. Laughter trickled in from somewhere near the third row. And then, Bach! Bach, Bach. Someone clucked like a chicken. It started soft, then spread. Peals of mocking laughter rolled over me like a wave crashing hard against my chest. But I didn't move. Not yet. Then the screen behind me lit up. It was me. Footage I didn't even know existed. Someone had filmed me in the hallway, days ago, when I'd sat on the bleachers humming to myself. No mic, just quiet singing. They'd looped it over with squawking sounds and animated chickens pecking the beat. The words, "Brave chicken, coming to a coop near you," flashed in glittery Comic Sans. The entire auditorium howled. I froze. I didn't look at anyone. I didn't flinch. I walked to the edge of the stage, slow, deliberate, and gently set the broken mic on the floor like it was made of glass. Then, with no lights, no soundtrack, and no backup, I sang, "Are you going to Scarborough Fair?" My voice wavered, barely audible, but it was real, raw, no filters. For a moment, the laughter faded. Someone even shushed the person next to them, but then, brrrring, the bell rang, the spell broke, chairs scraped back, the crowd dispersed, talking loudly, laughing again. I walked off stage like nothing happened, didn't look back. In the hallway, no one stopped me. No one whispered apologies. Not even silence. Just absence. I ducked into the restroom, locked the stall, looked in the mirror. My face was pale, but my eyes steady. They wanted a punchline, a breakdown, a scene. They wanted a show. Fine. I pulled my notebook from my bag and flipped to a blank page. In the center, I wrote, "No spotlight needed, just truth." I underlined it once, then again. That night, my mother waited for me at the kitchen table. I could see the worry in her eyes. Her mouth parted slightly like she wanted to say, "Are you okay?" But instead, she asked, "Do you want to talk?" I stood in the doorway, hoodie still on, damp around the sleeves. "Don't worry, Mom," I said quietly. "I've decided what I'll do." My voice didn't shake. It didn't rise. It was calm, still, but something inside had broken and rebuilt. They didn't know it yet, but they'd just lit the wrong fire. By 7:30 the next morning, the auditorium was still dark, the air inside damp from dew slipping in through the stage doors. I stepped inside carrying nothing flashy, just my notebook, a battered Walkman, and a burned CD in a thin plastic sleeve. The hoodie I wore had frayed cuffs and faint soup stains from a time Mom had laughed too hard while stirring, but it felt like armor. A substitute AV technician was setting up. Mid-30s, beard stubble, no nonsense. His name tag said Miles. I walked straight up to him. "I won't need a mic," I said, "but I'd like a clean sound check." He raised an eyebrow, nodded once. "Got it. You've got 5 minutes before the band arrives." I handed him the CD. Track 1, just ambient backing, no vocals. He popped it in, adjusted a few levels, and pressed play. The speakers whispered with soft wind, the faint call of gulls, then the hush of piano, like distant water droplets dancing on keys. I stood center stage, the room still empty. The lights dimmed low. I began to sing, not loudly, not to perform, just to say the words the way I wanted them heard. My voice didn't shake. When I finished, I heard Miles mutter quietly from behind the booth, "You're ready." That was enough. While I stepped backstage to gather my things, something else was starting to stir far from the stage. In the library media room, a senior named Lainey, who'd quietly watched everything all week, clicked upload on a short video titled, "What They Cut Out, The Real Voice." It was raw footage from the hallway, recorded without Kaylin's knowledge, sure, but clean, unedited. Just me, tucked behind a stack of chairs, softly humming Scarborough Fair. No farm sounds, no chicken memes, no clown effects, just me, small and unpolished, but real. Within an hour, it spread. Kids watched in homeroom, during lunch, in the bathroom between classes. I didn't know any of this yet, but I felt it, because when I walked down the science hall after third period, the laughter didn't echo. The sideways glances weren't cruel. Someone actually moved aside for me to pass. A boy I didn't know nodded slightly, his hands stuffed in his hoodie pocket. And then, at my locker, a girl from one of Callista's circles stepped forward. "I saw the real video," she said, voice low. "I'm sorry. For laughing before. It wasn't fair." I blinked. "Thanks," I whispered back. "For listening." That was all. I didn't smile, but something inside me settled, like a knot finally starting to untangle. Word spread. Even those who didn't like me didn't know what to do with me anymore, because now I wasn't the punchline, I was the playback. And Callista? She noticed. It was around 2:15 outside the cafeteria when we crossed paths. She leaned against a locker, arms folded. Her tone had that same sugary glaze she always used when she wanted to keep control. "You should thank me," she said, flipping her hair like punctuation. "I mean, publicity is still publicity, right?" I stared at her for a moment, then said quietly, "You taught me how to stand still while people threw things." She smirked, already satisfied. I added, calm as steel, "Now I know how to stand taller." That smirk faltered, and I kept walking. After school, I stopped by the auditorium again. No crowd, just the smell of stale programs and leftover glitter confetti scattered under the front row. I laid out what I would wear for the final performance, a simple blue dress. The same shade as Mom's hoodie, no sequins, no eyeliner, just me. Then I opened my notebook. I took the crumpled program, the one where they'd written Kaylee Goofy, and taped it inside the back cover. I looked at it for a moment, my heart still, no longer bleeding. "Thanks," I whispered. "You helped me write the final verse." The joke was over. What came next would be silence they'd never forget. I stood behind the heavy velvet curtain, my heart tapping quietly against my ribs. My fingers curled around the edges of my lyric notebook, edges soft from use, corners bent like folded time. The air smelled faintly of hairspray and old wood, and the floor beneath me vibrated with low murmurs from the audience already filling their seats. Peeking through a tiny slit in the curtain, I caught glimpses, rows of folding chairs packed with parents, some in weekend casual, others still in suits from work. A couple of teachers leaned in, scanning programs, and near the center aisle, a pair of local reporters sat with notepads on their laps, probably looking for a feel-good story to wrap up the school year. In the third row, Mom sat alone, her back perfectly straight, hands folded neatly in her lap. Tucked beneath her palm was the white handkerchief she'd once embroidered with my name, one letter slightly crooked, the thread a faded pink. She hadn't used it since Grandma's funeral. Callista was on the other side, near the show's organizing committee, wearing something shimmering. Her hair curled just enough to say effort, her lips glossy. She looked every bit the perfect student representative until she saw me watching and turned away. The MC, a senior boy with too much cologne, stepped onto the stage and tapped the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began. "Our closing act this evening is something a little different. A solo performance by Kaylin Godsey. No backing track, no spotlight cues, just her." A few quiet chuckles rippled from the student section. Then silence. I took a step forward, heart steady but hands tingling. One more step, and then, "Wait." The voice stopped me cold, not harsh, not mocking, just unsure. I turned. Callista was standing now, just at the foot of the stage. Her posture was stiff. She cleared her throat, glanced at the organizers, then back toward me. She reached for the spare mic, hand shaking slightly. I signed her up," she said, her voice rougher than usual, stripped of its usual sheen. "As a joke. I thought she'd back out. I figured she'd never go through with it." She looked down at her feet, then up again. "But she did. She kept showing up. I was wrong." The air in the auditorium thickened, like even sound was holding its breath. No gasps, no laughter, just stillness. Callista stepped back. Off the stage, off the moment, and I stepped into it. Center stage. Notebook still in hand, I nodded to the AV tech, and the wind piano track began. Gentle, like a memory that hadn't been tampered with. I didn't wait for the applause or even acknowledgement. I just closed my eyes. "Are you going to Scarborough Fair?" I let the words flow, not trying to overpower the room, just share something that had always belonged to me. Something that, for once, no one could steal or rename. A few lines in, I opened my eyes. Not a soul moved. Not even the fidgety 7th graders or the group of girls who usually scrolled through their phones during assemblies. In the 3rd row, my mom had both hands pressed to her mouth. Her eyes shimmered. I reached the final verse. My voice didn't soar. It didn't need to. It settled over them like dusk. Then she shall be a true love of mine. I didn't bow. I didn't wave. I opened my notebook, facing the audience, revealing the page taped inside, the program flyer from weeks ago, the one with the smudged ink that still read, Kaylee Goofy, solo vocal. I held it for 3 seconds, not to explain, not to shame, just to show. Then I lowered it. At first, nothing, just breath and blinking. Then Mrs. Carver, my music teacher, stood, then a parent, then a line of students, then the entire auditorium. They stood. For me. For once, I wasn't being pitied. I wasn't being tolerated. They stood because they heard me. I didn't smile. I didn't break down. I just stepped back from the microphone, though I'd never needed one, and said into the hush, "Thank you for hearing me. For real this time." Then I walked off stage and into my mother's arms. I didn't just sing. I rewrote the silence they left me in. The next morning was strangely quiet, the kind of quiet that didn't feel heavy anymore, just still, like the world was letting me breathe. I hadn't spoken to anyone yet. I didn't need to. On my way out to school, I spotted something taped to the front door. A pale yellow envelope. No stamp. No logo. Just my name in pencil. Kaylin, with slightly shaky handwriting that looked nothing like any of my teachers'. I slid a finger under the flap, opened it slowly. Inside was a small sheet of music paper, the kind with faint staff lines and a fold down the middle. Written in careful block letters, only one sentence. "Thank you for being the voice for the rest of us. You don't know me, but I heard you. A.H." I stood on the porch holding that note longer than I should have. The paper felt delicate, but the words felt stronger than anything anyone had said to me all year. At school, the air was different. Not just around me, but everywhere. The hallway didn't buzz with gossip or echo with sarcastic clucks. Instead, it felt respectful, like people were still trying to figure out what they'd just witnessed and weren't quite ready to treat it like a trend. I passed by the student bulletin board near the office. Taped to the top corner was a new addition. A candid photo. Me, center stage, caught mid-note, the light behind me instead of on me. Below it was a caption handwritten in bold marker, Kaylin Godsey Soloist, winner of the Silent Impact Award voted by students. I didn't stop. I didn't take a picture. I just kept walking. Because I didn't need proof anymore. Halfway down the hallway I spotted him, the janitor from weeks ago, the one who paused while I hummed beside the old piano. This time, as I walked past, he caught my eye and placed his hand gently over his chest. No words, just acknowledgement. I gave a slight nod and kept going, but my eyes stung, just for a moment. That afternoon, I stopped at the corner diner near Main Street to grab a sandwich before heading home. It was one of those places that smelled like coffee and cinnamon and hadn't changed its wallpaper since the 80s. I was reaching for a napkin when a voice spoke from the next booth. "You're the one who sang the folk song, right?" I turned. An elderly couple sat side by side. The woman smiled softly. The man's eyes were pale blue and kind. I nodded. He leaned forward just a little. "Reminded me of my daughter before she passed. She sang just like that, like the world forgot, but she remembered." I didn't know what to say. I just smiled, touched my heart, and whispered, "Thank you." That evening, my phone buzzed. It was from Callista. "You deserve it." No emojis, no punctuation. I didn't reply, but I took a screenshot. Then I deleted the thread, not out of spite, not even sadness, just peace. I wasn't trying to keep her out of my life anymore. I was just done making space for anyone who didn't know how to sit quietly when someone else was trying to speak. That night, I curled up in bed with my old notebook and a fresh pen. The cassette my mom recorded was still on my nightstand, even if I hadn't played it since that morning. I flipped to a blank page near the back, and I wrote, "The voice they tried to bury." And underneath it, in smaller letters, "But roots grow deep." For the first time, I didn't feel like I needed to write to explain anything. I was just writing because I could. Before I turned out the lamp, I sat up, turned to face the wall, and said the words like I was saying them to someone who needed them most. Sometimes they won't clap, sometimes they'll laugh, but when you speak from your bones, someone will hear you, maybe not loud, but clearly. Because what they'd done to me, it didn't break me. It just taught me how to echo,